Tonya TKO here, and we have a really special treat today. We're talking with the lawyer of Joycelyn Savage's parents, and so we're going to be discussing the R. Kelly case today. We're going to be asking some tough questions, so I hope Attorney Griggs is ready for the tough questions. And we're going to be jumping into it. Towards the latter part, we are going to be broadcasting for an hour. Towards the latter part, I'm going to take questions from the audience. So make sure that you have some really good, poignant questions so that we can ask him. All right, so are you ready to do this right now?
Sure.
All right, so Mr. Griggs, how did you come to be the lawyer for the Savages?
The Savages retained me after they had the press conference outside of Mr. Kelly's house. So a day after they had the press conference.
Okay, you're talking about the press conference that was inside of the documentary Surviving R. Kelly.
Yes, 2 years ago.
Oh, so that was 2 years ago. Wait, that footage?
They had a press conference outside of Mr. Kelly's house 2 years ago. It was included in the documentary, which was a couple months ago, but this all started 2 years ago.
Oh, wow. Okay. And what was it that made you decide to take on this case?
Just the level of anxiety and the level of skill that was required in this case. And I thought that, after doing a little bit of research, that it was a worthwhile case to lend my services to.
Okay. And so you decided to take this on. And when Joycelyn first got with R. Kelly, she was already of age, correct?
Yes, she was.
So then what was the basis for them getting a lawyer?
The basis for them getting a lawyer was the allegation of criminal activity that occurred in the Johns Creek house. And in Georgia, you can be of age and still be the victim of a crime.
All right. Well, that's interesting information. Okay. So you're a criminal attorney, not a civil attorney.
I'm a criminal defense attorney mainly, but I do handle some personal injury cases and civil rights cases.
And so the case that the Savages are forming against R. Kelly, is it a criminal case? Is it a civil case?
Well, right now we're just requesting a meeting. So there's currently no case, but as the facts continue to lend themselves, I do see it turning into a criminal case.
So for 2 years, you and the Savages have been trying to get a meeting with R. Kelly, and for 2 years, you've not been able to get a meeting?
No, we haven't been able to get a meeting for 2 years.
And so, okay, so right now there is a case against R. Kelly with 10 counts of, do you know the charges?
Child sexual abuse, 10 counts, 4 victims. 10. Yes.
All right. And so how does what it is that you're doing with the Savages, how does that go into play with the case that's already ongoing?
Well, we got in touch with a majority of the victims. We collected a majority of the evidence, some of the evidence in this particular case and some of the evidence for other cases. And then we provided our information to law enforcement and the prosecution.
Okay, so you're saying that you've spoken with other victims?
Yes.
And that you've gathered information from other victims?
Yes.
And that information was sent over to the police, and so that is being used in the 10 counts case right now?
Some of it's been used in a 10 count case, and some of it will be used in other cases.
Oh, I see. So that means that the charges are not all fully unfurled.
No, it's 2 other independent investigations occurring as we speak.
Okay, so one of the investigations is for the tape that was from 20 years ago, approximately. And then there's another investigation.
There are 3 tapes.
I'm sorry?
There are 3 tapes. So yes, one of them is from the tape that's from 20 years ago. And then the other 2 accusers have their own tapes and their own DNA evidence.
Yeah, you know what? And you know what? I'm glad that I have you on live right now, because there's so much information out there, and I don't really know what's true, what's not true. I don't know what's been resolved, what hasn't been. But I did hear that there was an adult woman who was, I believe, a hairdresser, who said that R. Kelly forced her into oral sex, and that there was DNA evidence on her blouse. Is that what we're talking about with the DNA evidence, or is it something else?
That's one of the pieces of DNA evidence. And then there's another individual who alleges that R. Kelly had sex with them and deposited some of his DNA on one of her shirts. Those are two individuals that are named in the indictment.
Okay. And so how do we know that it wasn't consensual?
You can't have consensual sex with a minor.
Okay, so these people who are alleging this were minors at the time of the occurrence.
3 of them were minors, yes.
Oh wow! So the hairdresser was a minor with the DNA on her.
No, the hairdresser was not a minor. The other 3 were. The hairdresser is alleging that she was forced to perform a sex act.
Okay, and then so the other minors who have DNA evidence, you're saying that. So when did they come forward with the DNA evidence? Did they come forward after they were already adults? How do we know the age of this DNA?
Well, I'm not going to get into the specifics because it's an ongoing case. But trust me, the DNA has been tested and it comes back confirmatory towards one Robert Sylvester Kelly.
Okay, but we're not going to talk about when it may have been deposited because of the ongoing investigation.
Yes.
All right. And so one of my biggest questions about this whole situation is there are people who, and I heard you on the Frank Ski morning show on V103, and he was parroting a sentiment that many people have. Oh, the parents are at fault. And you seem like you had a lot to add about that. So I wanted to give you a platform to be able to talk to the people who do feel that the parents were at fault.
Tell me what criminal code the parents broke. With regard to my clients, they did merely what any other artist has done with Mr. Kelly for the last 25 years, and that's tried to set up an arrangement whereby Sony would sign their daughter and that he potentially could be the executive producer. So again, explain to me what criminal code the parents broke.
Okay. Well, that's a good question. So there was no criminal code that they broke. However, people are saying morally, they knew that this guy was problematic, yet they introduced their daughter to a person who had a history of assault of minors, yet they still introduced them.
They engaged an individual about a deal with Sony. That individual introduced them to Robert Sylvester Kelly as an executive producer. That's no different than what Lady Gaga did being on one of his songs, Kelly Price did with being on one of his songs, and then numerous other artists that have used him as an executive producer. So again, I asked, what did these parents do that was any different than anybody else that's worked with Mr. Kelly over the last 25 years?
Okay, so you're saying that what it is that they did was perfectly normal, that they just acted as any parent would.
They acted as any individual trying to break into the music industry has done over the last 25 years with regard to Mr. Robert Sylvester Kelly, and they didn't break any laws. So when I hear individuals basically stating that the parents have some fault, I take offense to that, especially with regard to the Savages. I'm sorry, the phone keeps dropping, but that's my issue. So I would ask, what criminal code did they break?
Well, you know what? I guess there was no criminal code that they broke. However, R. Kelly went on to Gayle King's show saying that the Savages sold their daughter to him. What are your thoughts on that?
My thoughts are that would be a violation of the law. That would be child sex trafficking. And my question to Mr. Kelly is, where's your proof? Where's the receipts? Where's any indication that happened? We have witnesses and evidence, video footage, as well as audio footage to refute that, which some of which we've released. So again, my question to Mr. Kelly, sounds like you just admitted to criminal child sex trafficking, which is one of the investigations that are going on. So I don't know why you would go on national television and admit to a massive federal felony. So again, my clients did no such thing. There's absolutely no proof. And we will continue to submit evidence to law enforcement that shows that did not happen. But we will also submit evidence to law enforcement that shows that there is a substantial issue going on with criminal liability.
Okay. And so child sex trafficking, at what age is the cutoff for child sex trafficking?
It depends on the state. Federally, there are certain age cutoffs, and again, because it's an ongoing criminal investigation, I don't want to get into that. But what I can state unequivocally is Savage had no type of contact that would be considered child sex trafficking with Mr. Robert Sylvester Kelly.
All right. And so I also heard you say in the Frank Ski interview that no competent attorney would allow their client to get onto Gayle King's show the way that Kelly did. Please follow up on that.
I mean, when your client is a target of 3 investigations and is facing 70 years in prison, no way you put him on Gayle King to make the statements he made. He showed quite clear that he has serious criminal liability. I think he made several admissions against his interests, which will be used against him in the trial. Namely, he's never had sex with any underage girls. There's DNA to prove that he has. So I just think that it was it was professional malpractice to go on that show and allow your client to make those statements.
Okay, well, I'm a layperson, so I don't know the law like you do. What are some of the things that he said to incriminate himself besides that he has never had sexual contact with a minor?
The parents sold the children to me.
Oh.
That's an admission to child sex trafficking. And again, the Savages strongly rebut that. That never happened. But for him to get on national television and say someone sold him children for the purpose of sex, that's an admission.
Okay. And something, I'm not sure if you know this, but one of the things that I picked up on during the interview with Joycelyn and Azriel is that Azriel was saying that that the parents were trying to blackmail R. Kelly, saying that, well, first she said that they were trying to get her to
She said her parents were doing that, not my clients. Again, I heard what Azriel said. I don't represent the Clarys, so I don't really have any comment on that. But it's kind of impossible for Azriel to know what the Savages were doing because she never met the Savages, nor has she ever talked to the Savages.
Oh, got you. And so when you say that the Savages have been trying to get a meeting with R. Kelly for 2 years, what happens when you try to set up the meeting? Is he just not showing up? Is he canceling at the last minute? Is he not answering?
We've spoken directly to Mr. Kelly through phone conversations. Tim Savage did speak to him one time. We've spoken to several of his managers on multiple occasions, which ended up in threats of bodily harm, which is why one of the managers is charged with a felony. We reached out to all of his attorneys, including Mr. Greenberg, on numerous occasions, and we have not received an answer. The first answer we got was after we had the press conference last Wednesday, when we finally were able to speak with Joycelyn Savage. We have text messages, we have emails, we have letters that have been sent to Mr. Kelly through his representatives. We have still received no confirmation of a meeting.
Okay. Wow. I'm sorry, I'm stunned by this. You said that the manager threatened physical harm to whom?
Henry James Mason threatened to kill Tim Savage. He is currently on bond in Henry County, Georgia, for terroristic threats.
Wow. When did he do this?
May of 2018.
Wow, this is stunning. So right now, is he in custody or is he out?
No, he's out on bond, which is one of the reasons why we keep reiterating we will not come to Chicago unless law enforcement is present and a meeting occurs at either the Cook County State's Attorney's Office or the police department.
All right. And so were you representing the Savages when Joycelyn did that interview where you saw the person going like this in the background, the shadow? You remember that?
Yes. I've represented the Savages since the day after their first press conference. So yes, I was representing them when I saw a coached interview with TMZ.
Okay. And so the Savages are alleging that their daughter is being held against her will. What are they alleging?
They're alleging that she's been held against her will, that she's a member of a sex cult, and that she's been brainwashed. Those have been their statements from the very beginning.
All right. And so what was it that made you feel that that interview was a coached interview, the one where she was like, "Oh no, I'm okay. Please leave me alone." When she did that and the person was like, when they asked her that question and so what was it that made you feel that that was
The shadow that went across her chest, and also the things she was stating, because at no point has she had any conversation with her parents about this conversation, saying, "I've told you guys many, many times, I'm happy where I want to be." The first time we ever heard any of that was on the phone when they called last Wednesday. So I'm confused about how these new facts are being introduced into this case. And that's why they want to meet with her in person, apart from anybody associated with R. Kelly's camp. She also stated in that phone interview that nobody was present during the phone conversation, but obviously somebody was, because they taped it and released it to Entertainment Tonight. So clearly somebody was in the room recording her conversation.
Okay. And you know what? I saw Surviving R. Kelly, but there's one part that I don't remember for sure. But was it Joycelyn that was with Dominique when they were in Beverly Hills? Was that Joycelyn that was with her?
Yes, she was.
Okay, so R. Kelly is saying that they're free to come and go, that they were shopping, etc.
That's not what
What's
Dominique just said, that in the New Yorker this morning, that none of that is true, that he tried to break her. And even in that interview, they said that nobody that was in the house is with them, but Dominique was in the house and she was with her during that interview. Again, unraveling the falsehoods and the alternative facts is really difficult in this case, because people are playing fast and loose with the facts. She said she was out in California visiting family and friends. She doesn't have any family and friends in California. So I'm confused about who she was visiting and where they were going, even in that interview.
huh? You know what? I'm confused too. So if you could help us get up to speed, because I didn't see the thing in the New Yorker this morning. What is Dominique alleging now?
Dominique is alleging that R. Kelly abused her and attempted to break her. Her exact words were, she was beaten with an extension cord, that in Atlanta, they were told they couldn't leave the house. Her words are, it all changed in Atlanta. They were abused and beaten by Robert Sylvester Kelly. That's what she stated in the New Yorker article this morning.
Okay. So the breaking was the alleged physical assault or abuse.
And mental.
Okay. So she's alleging that the term break, it basically signifies that he attempted to break her mentally, physically, through physical abuse. And in what other ways is she alleging that he attempted to break her?
I mean, I'm not sure. I read most of the article. I don't want to put words in her mouth, but she said that he attempted to break her.
Okay.
I think Jim DeRogatis would be a better person to say exactly what she said, because I have not directly interviewed Miss Gardner yet. So hopefully I'll have that opportunity at some point. But I would hope law enforcement would get in touch with her immediately, because from what I've heard that she said, she's outlined several crimes that occurred in Fulton County, Georgia.
Okay. And so one of the crimes would be physical abuse.
False
What?
imprisonment, kidnapping, and aggravated assault, which are major felonies.
Okay.
And they don't
Hmm.
require an age limit on them. There's no age of consent to false imprisonment, kidnapping, and aggravated assault.
Okay. So one of the things that I heard from some of my viewers is they came out and they said, "Well, listen, Joycelyn Savage, she's now 23 years old, correct?"
Yes,
Okay. And that a 23-year-old woman is saying, "Listen, I'm fine. Why don't you trust what it is that I'm saying?" So why is it that we're
because
not
numerous
trusting?
people because numerous people have identified that at the Johns Creek house, they were locked in rooms, forced to use the bathroom in buckets, and subjected to physical abuse, including Dominique Gardner. So a 23-year-old woman can come out and say she's fine all day long, but if the evidence says that something happened, it doesn't matter how old she was. A crime was committed, and her parents want to get to the bottom of how she's doing physically, emotionally, and spiritually, and make sure she's not being abused.
Okay. And then what about the wellness checks that happened where people were like, oh, okay, well, they're fine. What about the wellness checks?
Well, clearly they didn't speak to Dominique Gardner, and we have information that they never spoke to Joycelyn Savage. They spoke to somebody on FaceTime who purported to be Joycelyn Savage. So again, if law enforcement would do their investigation, they would get to the bottom of what's really happening here.
Okay, so you're alleging that when law enforcement went to the household to do a wellness check, that they spoke with somebody who claimed to be Joycelyn and also
They
claimed
spoke to
to be.
one of Mr. Kelly's handlers who brought up somebody on a FaceTime. The parents met with law enforcement, showed them a picture of Joycelyn Savage and said, is this the person that you spoke to on FaceTime? And law enforcement said, no, that was not the person they spoke to. So we believe, based on the evidence that we have, at least in Johns Creek, they never spoke to Joycelyn Savage.
Oh, this is very interesting. This is stuff that I had not heard before, that I'm sure that no one has heard. Okay, so these wellness checks you're saying were frauds.
Staged. They were interrupted by members of Mr. Kelly's staff. That is what witnesses have told me. I've also interviewed neighbors in that neighborhood who say they called the police because they've noticed strange behavior happening at that house. 5 neighbors have said that.
Okay, so strange behavior. What do you know what they mean by strange behavior?
People coming and going at all hours of the night. Uh, Interesting behavior that seems suspicious to them. They didn't witness any physical assaults or any crimes, but they certainly called law enforcement to investigate because the nature of that neighborhood, you don't have strange individuals coming all hours of the night.
Okay. Well, you know what? You know so much more about this than we do. I'm curious. What do you think is happening to Joycelyn? What do you
I'm
think
not
is
sure.
going on?
I'm not sure. That's why we would like an opportunity to speak to her directly and, just have a conversation, let her know some of the things that we know, see what her response is to what we know, and see if she really is there of her own free will. And if she is, then the parents will move on with their lives. The criminal justice system will take its course against Mr. Kelly, and we'll see how things turn out.
Okay, so this is what you're saying, and correct. This is what I'm hearing. Let me know if I'm not hearing correctly. You're saying that if the Kelly camp would allow Joycelyn to talk with her parents, and she says to her parents, "Look, I'm fine. Everything is okay," then her parents will move on with their lives. Is that what you're saying?
They're saying that her parents would be satisfied that they have an open line of communication. We're not talking about just a one-time meeting where they meet with her, she says she's fine. They want to reestablish the familial bonds with their child who they've known for 23 years. And, if they reestablish that and there's no evidence that we can find that she's been abused or anything like that, they're going to move forward with their lives, with their daughter in their lives. But if there is substantial evidence that we believe she's being abused, which we already have, then they're going to let the legal system take its course.
Okay. And so this is what I'm hearing, right? They had a good relationship with their daughter up until the age of 19. And then what happened?
And then she met Robert Sylvester Kelly and she stopped communicating with her parents.
Okay. And so how do we as the general public know that maybe her and her parents didn't have a falling out? Maybe she just over her parents? How do we know that there's somebody else in between her speaking to her parents?
Because for 19 years, she had a steady relationship with her parents. For 19 years, she had a steady relationship with her sisters. For 19 years, she had a steady relationship with her grandparents and her aunts and her uncles. The only thing that changed was she met Robert Sylvester Kelly, and then all of a sudden, she didn't want to have anything to do with any of them. So I hear all the conversation on social media. Let's just, for sake of argument, let's just say, okay, maybe she didn't want to talk to her parents anymore. Why didn't she want to talk to her little sister? Little sister's 11. What has her little sister ever done to her? Why didn't she want to talk to her grandmother who has stage 4 cancer, and a grandfather who passed away, and she didn't even get a chance to go to his funeral? Why didn't she come to her middle sister's graduation? These are things that reasonable individuals would have questions about. So I understand there's a lot of speculation on social media, but trust me, we know the facts of this case quite well, and so does law enforcement, and everybody has questions.
Oh, wow. Okay. So Joycelyn, because when I saw the documentary, I wasn't really familiar with the names of the people. So Joycelyn was not the person who had the sister come with her, and then
No, that would be Azriel.
So that was Azriel's sister who was allegedly thrown out in the alley and threatened to be killed.
Yes, that was Azriel's sister.
Okay. And so Joycelyn has a younger sister, a middle sister, grandmother. Her grandfather died of cancer, and she has not been in contact with her family for any of that.
For none of it.
Yeah, that does sound strange. That does sound strange. So even if she had fallen out with the parents, why the complete separation from everyone else? And so, see, the dilemma that I'm having is she comes out into the media and she's like, look, this is my boyfriend. We're happy. We're in love. We're fine. I've spoken to my parents. We're good. Please leave us alone. So the dilemma that I'm having is that there's a woman of age who is saying one thing. However, there's this insidious stuff that's being insinuated that's operating under the water. So what are your thoughts on that? I'm just trying to wrap my head around that.
Well, I mean, I've been practicing law for a long time, and victims of domestic abuse say a whole lot of things, whether they're underage or above age. So, I mean, it doesn't really bother me that she's 23 years old saying she's in a loving, consensual relationship with a 52-year-old man and another 21-year-old young lady, and we should just stop. That's not how this thing works. How it works is we get to the bottom of what's going on. And did I mention the guy has a 25-year history of predatory behavior? So again, they can come out in the media all they want. We have trained professionals who can see through the smoke screen. And what we want is a meeting. If everything is okay, it wouldn't take 2 years. She would have easily have come home, said, Mom, Dad, you know what? I'm in love with him. I just need a break from y'all for a little while. That would have been the way to handle this, not a complete, silence for 2 years until he gets arrested twice. And then you start seeing your parents on national TV saying, hey, something's wrong. And then you get word that there's 2 other investigations and you got to start cleaning stuff up. Here's the thing. They've got my telephone number. They've gotten my letters. They've seen the parents on national TV all over the internet asking for the same thing, a meeting. Make the meeting happen. If everything is fine, then everything is fine. But it's a whole lot of smoke. And usually where there's a whole lot of smoke, there's a big fire.
Oh, wow. Okay. And so, you know what? I'm so glad that you brought up the social media aspect, because one of the biggest things because I heard you mention that he's 52 and she's 23. One of the biggest things that I hear is a comparison to Hugh Hefner. Give me your thoughts on that.
Well, here's the thing. I wasn't alive when Hugh Hefner was doing whatever he's doing. And if he was violating young women, there should have been lawyers and prosecutors that stood up. We're not in Hugh Hefner's time. What we are is in a time where there needs to be accountability for predators, especially in the African-American community. I hear people saying all the time, what about the Catholic priest? Well, they just sentenced the Catholic priest to 8 years in prison. What about Harvey Weinstein? He's got a trial and he's got, 15 documentaries already out there? What about Kevin Spacey? He's going to trial. So are we comparing our community to any other community just to deflect, or are we really interested in justice? Because all of those individuals are going to be held accountable. And so why shouldn't an individual with a 25-year history of predatory behavior, and now 3 new sex tapes, 2 new pieces of DNA, 4 new accusers that have been charged, 8 women in the documentary, 50 witnesses in the documentary, 3 actual documentaries, not just one, 3 documentaries, and now 2 independent investigations? Are we just going to just leave all that alone because it's not happening in other communities the way it's happening in ours? No, we're not going to do that. What we're going to do is follow the evidence where it leads. If it leads to a conviction and massive amounts of jail time, we send in a message in our community, not in our community, and then we'll deal with the other communities. But right now, we're dealing with ours.
Okay, you know what? Thank you for adding that, because one of the biggest comments that I get from deflectors is, "You're right. What about the Catholic priest? What about Harvey Weinstein?" Your phone is breaking up a little bit, but I know it took us so long to get on air that we just have to work with what it is that we have.
Yeah.
So what it is that I heard is that Harvey Weinstein has 5 or 15 documentaries.
15 documentaries. I can
All right.
send you the graphic if you want.
Okay, so he has 15 documentaries. One Catholic priest was just sentenced to 8 years in prison. Kevin Spacey has a trial coming up. So you're saying that those things are being handled in other communities. And then regarding to Hugh Hefner, you're saying if there was foul play, that was something that should have been looked at by an attorney. From what it is that I know, the young ladies from the Hugh Hefner house were able to come and go as they please. And so I think one of the biggest things inside of this R. Kelly thing, which is a point of contention for people, is that, like you said, the young ladies are not in contact with their families, their younger siblings, their grandparents, their parents, that there's just a total and complete disconnection of communication from their loved ones who they had great relationships with before. And that not going to her grandfather's funeral, that really hits hard for me, because I can't imagine that any young person who had a great relationship with their grandparent would not be there when they get sick. And you said her grandmother has cancer right now.
Yeah, stage 4, yes.
And she's not been in contact with her grandmother.
Nope.
All right. And so I'd love for you to speak to the people who are saying that we're just trying to bring a Black man down. You're a Black man. How much of R. Kelly's race do you think is playing a part in his quote unquote takedown?
None, because most of the people that are part of the quote unquote takedown are African American. So this has nothing to do with people trying to take a Black man down. What they're trying to do is protect Black women. And so when you have 25-year history of predatory behavior, you got 8 accusers in the documentary, you got 48 individuals that I know of. I don't think this is a takedown of a Black man by the system. If anything, we're trying to make the system work to protect Black women.
Okay. All right. So it's not necessarily a takedown of a Black man, but a lift up of the issues concerning Black women, which have not been addressed for more than 25 years. And some of it happening blatantly in front of others. Speaking of others, is there a ring? Is there a ring? I heard you mention RICO in the Ski interview, but is there a ring?
There are enablers. There are a lot of enablers. And trust me, they're being investigated as we speak. So I believe that there will be more indictments that come, and there will be people that have facilitated this for years that will be brought to bear to answer to these charges, because he didn't do this alone. There are individuals who are still helping him right now. And so I think that there will be a RICO conspiracy charge in this case. And I think that you will see indictments for child sex trafficking quite soon.
Okay. And so the sex trafficking part would come from transporting
Minors over
minors.
state lines for the purpose of sex. Yes.
Okay. And I heard you say that the Savages believe that their daughter is a part of a sex cult. What does that mean?
That means that there's evidence that Mr. Kelly has multiple girlfriends upon which he has sex with in various places around the country, that he keeps in a certain way apart from their families. And so that's why my clients called it a sex cult. I don't know if it's a sex cult. What I do know is that young women are being transported across state lines for the purpose of sex, and many of them were underage. I do know that.
Okay. One of my viewers today left a comment saying that when her daughter traveled across state lines, she had to fill out all of this paperwork, etc. When her minor daughter traveled across state lines, how is he able to transport girls without the paperwork of the parents?
How he's got people that are assisting him. And so that's one of the main issues. I mean, you got to fill out paperwork to book flights, to get TSA clearances and do all other sorts of things. And so individuals have some serious liability because we have proof of flights. And I think Mr. Kelly himself released a waiver that one of the parents signed, but it was after they had moved the child. So I agree with you. You got to fill out a lot of paperwork. And again, that's why I think there's going to be strong evidence of child sex trafficking in this case.
Oh, wow. Well, you know what? Listen, we're going to get ready to take some questions from the audience. So please listen, get your questions ready. Make sure the questions are poignant. Right now, we have over 400 people inside of the chat room. So in just about 4 or 5 minutes, I'm going to be taking questions from all of you, right? Well, from the people who, so make sure that you get your questions put up to the top. There are some people who are saying that Andrea Kelly participated in some of the underage things. There are also people who are alleging that R. Kelly gets stuff on his quote unquote victims by having them participate in some illegal child activity themselves, and so that they can't really turn against him because there's this stuff on the record. Have you heard anything like that?
I've heard that, and I mean that's what happens when you don't really understand how the law works. Listen, if they were involved in this in any form or fashion, they face criminal liability, and it's not going to stop the prosecution from prosecuting Mr. Kelly and them. So, you know, by getting them to engage in sexual acts with children to think that they won't talk, I mean, if the feds get a hold of the evidence, they're going to talk at that point. So, I mean, I don't think that was a very smart move if it in fact happened. And I can't really comment on whether it happened because it's a pending investigation. But just that hypothetical, that's not a bright way to try to cover your tracks.
Okay. So you're saying that, but do you think that they would talk if they also are incriminated? That's less motivation for a person to come forward and say, listen, I did this, but this is happening to me right now.
But what happens when the federal government gets a copy of what you did and confronts you with it? I think you're going to start talking because at that point, you know that you're caught. So you might as well tell on the other person.
Okay. But then that's contingent upon the federal government having evidence. But if the federal government...
They have evidence. Trust me, they have evidence. Some of which have been publicly reported already.
Okay. So this is what I'm hearing. If there was a person who has been quote unquote victimized by R. Kelly and they themselves participated in a crime as some sort of blackmail insurance, that the federal government can get a hold of that information. If they already have a hold of the information, then that person is most likely going to flip on the other person because the bonds of the blackmail are not strong enough to be able to save them.
I mean, when somebody says, listen, we got evidence that you had sex with a child and you transported that child over state lines for the purpose of child sex trafficking, it's called a violation of the Mann Act. And you could face up to 20 years in prison unless you start talking. And if you start talking, we can give you immunity for what you already did. I think they're going to start talking.
Okay, so then that would be contingent upon some sort of plea deal, and then they'll be like, okay, well, let me turn over what it is that I have. All right, so let me pull a question. Let me pull a question from the audience right now.
Mm-hmm.
There's somebody who's alleging that R. Kelly, so Alicia Moore is saying that R. Kelly has the people write and sign documents about things that they have done in advance to have something to hold over their heads. If what Geronda Pace says is true, as she said that's what he did to her.
Non-disclosure agreements to cover up a criminal act are not, you can't operate on those under the law. So you can't agree in a contract to conceal a criminal act. So I've heard about the non-disclosure agreements. I've also heard about the blackmail information. What people need to understand is once the federal government, if they don't already have it, get that information, They may enter into an immunity agreement with the individual to relieve them of any criminal liability and then let them talk. That's the way most RICO cases are work, especially if you have a lot of information on the main target. So I wouldn't be worried about that. What I'd be worried about if there are any plane tickets out there that show a certain individual was transported before their 18th birthday from one state to another without their parents' permission.
Oh, okay. Outside of the audience is asking, under whose name is the Trump condo?
I know the answer to that, but again, it's an ongoing criminal investigation. But what I would say is if you just look online, you might be able to find that.
Okay, so you know the answer, but you're not giving it up.
No, because it's an ongoing criminal investigation.
Okay, so Rosalind Washington is saying, why can't the FBI and law enforcement go get Joycelyn and Azriel? Didn't R. Kelly's lawyer stop him from doing the Gayle King's interview because he made himself look guilty? So why can't the FBI just burst in and go get them?
That's a better question for the FBI. I think at this point, because there's an ongoing criminal investigation, I think they're taking their time and being very thorough.
Okay, and Jasmine has asked this question a few times, so I guess she's trying to get this answered. She wants to, so Jasmine Harris asked, what happens if you feel they have the meeting scripted? So what happens?
We'll be able to determine if they have the meeting scripted. We noticed the phone call was scripted, and we showed you guys how we could break through the phone call scripting, which is one of the reasons why her sisters were present. You notice how she paused for a good 20 to 30 seconds. Again, we've been in touch with a large majority of the accusers who know the manipulative behavior of Mr. Kelly. So we're not gonna put everything out there, but we know how to break through the manipulation.
Okay, so the interview so the phone call that they had inside of the office where the sisters were there, you feel that phone call was scripted?
I know it was scripted.
How do you know it was scripted?
Because a certain individual told me that she was alone in the meeting on the phone. And then I spoke to another individual who said they recorded the conversation. So obviously somebody's not telling the truth, because if you're on the phone saying I'm the only one here, and then Entertainment Tonight gets a copy of the tape, you know, we only made one copy, and that was, you guys saw it. We were recording it as it was happening, so we had proof of what was happening. But now you release a tape to Entertainment Tonight, which was edited by a third party, and now we can prove that it was scripted, that it was staged, that individuals set it up, but they didn't realize that we were recording as they were recording. So remember when Jury said, "Hey, Joycelyn, this is Jury," and you heard her gasp? Yeah, that part was edited out of the Entertainment Tonight video. So you might want to go back and check that out.
Yeah, you know, I hope to see a few questions, a few coming in quickly. So if there's a question that you want me to put some sort of emoji like the red siren or the red exclamation points, those are good so that I could see it as it's scrolling by, so I could tell the difference between the urgent questions and just regular comments. So there's one person who said, what happened with the Detroit case of the 13-year-old girl?
Yeah, still being investigated. Again, I told you there are open investigations happening as we speak. And I haven't even spoken to that young lady yet.
Okay. How many different states are doing investigations against R. Kelly?
Currently, New York, Michigan, Illinois, Georgia, the ones that I know of.
Okay, so 4 different states. So we have to, so are the RICO laws federal, or do they vary state by state?
They vary state by state, but there is a RICO conspiracy law.
Okay. And then, you know something, this is a question from me that I'm confused about, because when, do you know Michael Avenatti?
I know Michael, yes.
Okay. Okay, I'm not gonna ask any personal questions, because I do have some personal questions.
You wanna know whether it's against the law to have child porn? Is that the question you want to know?
No, but that is a
Oh,
good
okay.
question. I guess for the purposes of the case, it's not. But my question though is Michael Avenatti did a press conference where he stated that the new tape that he has is not of the original young lady who was alleged to be 14, the one that came out. And then I heard in the Gayle King interview that two of the tapes were of her. So please clarify that for us.
Here's the thing, and this is the mistake that Mr. Kelly is making and his lawyer is making. They keep on saying that they've litigated the tape with RL. That's the girl's name. Um, but the problem is, it's not the same tape. So again, I haven't seen the tape, but what I have seen is pictures, and it's a different scene, a different day, a different sex act, and this individual identifies how old she is in the tape. So for them to keep saying it's double jeopardy, yeah, double jeopardy applied to the child pornography for that day and that tape. This is not that same tape. It's a different tape.
Oh, so you're saying that even if it is the same young lady, a different tape, that it's not double jeopardy, be different count of aggravated sexual assault or whatever the case may be.
Exactly. So it's like this. Let's just say hypothetically, it's a hypothetical. Let's say him and the young lady had sex on one day and he recorded that and he went to trial on that and he was found not guilty on that. Okay, well, if he went the next day and recorded a different sex act with the same victim, with the same camera, it's a different act, it's a different crime, and you can be charged with that. And that's exactly what I believe happened. Again, I haven't seen the tape, but I have seen pictures of the tape, and the pictures are on the internet. So it's a different tape, same victim, different sex acts, different tape, better quality.
Oh, speaking of better quality, I've also heard that he has not stopped filming, that he has continued out the
It's true.
decades, and that there are iPad videos now out there. What are your thoughts on that?
There were 48 tapes in that bag. So we're just talking about 3 tapes from the 90s and the 2000s. I would love to find out where these iPad videos are, because I've heard that from multiple sources that he continues to film. So it would be nice if somebody would serve a search warrant and see if we can find these iPad videos, and then the discussion ends about whether or not this was in the past or is he still doing this or any of that, because he's still filming.
So could Muhammad ask a question? Why do the Savages have an attorney?
The Savages have an attorney because there's an ongoing criminal investigation in multiple states, and that there were allegations of criminal behavior in this state. So the best way to navigate any type of situation is to have an attorney. I mean, corporations have attorneys on standby at all times. So if you're going to navigate a potential legal minefield where people are lobbing allegations against you that are unfounded, it's always good to have an attorney.
Okay, got you, got you. Also, it went by too fast, so I didn't grab their name, but they want to know, what do you know about the attempted suicide pact from last night?
I don't know anything about that. That was the first time I'd ever heard anything like that. I don't want to even put that in the air. My hope is these young ladies are in fact fine, and that was just a hoax. But that was the first time I'd heard anything about that when it was publicly reported.
And so I'm getting another question that's coming in. Why hasn't the defense attorney, I couldn't see his name by fast. They want to know what's gotten a copy of these tapes so that they can review them.
That's a good question. It's not hard to get a copy of the tapes. I think the defense attorney needs to call the prosecution, file the appropriate documents, and he can start getting the evidence. I mean, most of the evidence is already online. You just got to know where to look. So I don't really understand why he hadn't started his investigation, and he keeps saying he hadn't seen anything, and nobody's contacted him. The last time I checked, nobody contacts you unless you know your client's about to be indicted. So I think that instead of appearing on Good Morning America and showing up on Gayle King, he start preparing for his trial.
When is the trial going to be?
Well, his next court date is next week. The possibility, if he files a speedy trial, he could be a trial in less than a month and a half. If I was him, I wouldn't move that fast. But you know, it could be sometime this year. Hopefully, it's this year, so we can get to a swift resolution with that case, and then move on to the other two cases that are coming, and maybe the third case, and we can get some resolution. These young ladies can come home, and we can move on to some more important things in our community other than Mr. Robert Sylvester Kelly.
Okay, you know what? There's so many questions coming in, but we're going to be wrapping this up in about 10 minutes. So if you do have an answer, make sure that you get it in and make sure that you make it stand out from the rest of the comments, especially if I haven't answered your question, if we haven't answered your question already. And so big question. Do you think Robert Sylvester Kelly will see any jail time?
Yes. He's already seen some jail time. The question is whether Robert Sylvester Kelly will see prison time. And my hope is that if the prosecution does their job, the answer will be yes. This particular case is a lot stronger than the one that he beat back in 2008. I believe the prosecution, when they get a second bite at the apple, usually are successful. You saw what happened to OJ. So I'm just trying to make sure that my client's daughter understands the gravity of what's happening here. She may very well believe that nothing is happening, but there are so many other accusers that are coming forward that have credible allegations with proof. So hopefully, at some point she'll snap out of the spell and we can get to the bottom of what's really happening.
Okay, so Danny Icon is asking, do you think there was money involved in the first case that got him off?
There are allegations of a payoff. I have not been able to rate that.
Okay, and how do you think, because you said he can go to trial as early as 1 month, but you wouldn't advise that. How do you think R. Kelly was able to get the first trial delayed 6 years, Mr. Griggs? 6 years. I think your thing is frozen. So while it's frozen, I'm going to take a few moments to just look through the questions. Right now, we have over 500 people inside the room. This is going down live, right? Make sure that you thumbs up and that you thumbs up the video. You can close out the chat for a moment to like the video. That stuff really matters for the YouTube algorithm. It looks like Mr. Griggs is still frozen, and I hope that we have not lost him, because we've gotten to the juicy part right now. So there's somebody who's asking in the room, do Savages take any responsibility for introducing their daughter Kelly? And so he answered that earlier in the broadcast. We was saying that, that her parents really only parents do when getting their children, their children signed to certain record labels. They meet a person, so they introduced their daughter to a person who then introduced R. Kelly. So the only person that is responsible for a crime is the person who commits the crime. And Mr. Griggs said earlier that if you could point to whatever criminal statute it was that the parents broke, then show that statute, your child, to a person for a professional relationship is not, and he's saying there's no evidence of any money being exchanged or even being demanded, and if there is, then he can provide receipts for that. And so R. Kelly stated on the Gayle King that the parents, quote unquote, sold their daughters to him. That right there is admission of a crime, child sex trafficking. So R. Kelly may have made things much worse for himself by saying those things. So we have a lot of people. So listen, I'm hoping that he can get a chance to tap back in, because his camera he froze and then went down. The connection was a little wonky to begin with, and then it just got to the point that that it just crashed. So Olga's asking, do you think R. Kelly has multiple personality disorder? It is irresponsible for any psychological professional to attempt to diagnose a person from afar and without their consent. So in order to give a proper psychological diagnosis of any person, you would have to evaluate them one-on-one. You'd have to evaluate them in person. So I don't know about all of that. So listen, give me just 1 second. I'm going to send him a message to see what happened and if he's coming back. All right, give me 1 second. Hopefully he can get a chance to listen. You know, it's Mercury retrograde. And all right. So welcome in, everybody. So for those of you who are just joining us right now, I am Tonya Tko. I'm a self-love specialist from TonyaTko.com. I help you learn how to love yourself and each other. We jumped on to this R. Kelly story when the documentary came out, Surviving R. Kelly, right? It was at the beginning of the year. And so we've been following the story. We are right now in the process of talking with Gerald Griggs, who is the attorney for Joycelyn Savage's parents. And so I'm allowing you all to put your questions through. We've been on air for almost an hour with Mr. Griggs, and then we're waiting for him to come back. And V. Dot, thank you for the compliments. Thank you. And so let's see. So Shauna is asking if the video showing the same girl from 15 years ago, but in a different act, will she be given evidence? Will she be giving evidence in the trial? Now that is a good question. Let's see. So let me check my text messages. Let's see. Okay, give me 1 second. All right, give me 1 second. And if we don't get him back, we're going to wrap up the show, and we're just going to have him back on another day. Give me just 1 second. I was just sending him a message right there. So, do you think the ladies are pregnant? That is a good question, and that's a question I'm not sure that Mr. Griggs can answer, because according to him, they have in contact with Joycelyn, unmonitored contact for 2+ years. So that's a good question, but then who would really know? I whether or not there is real true documentation out there that any of these girls have had abortions, and if they have, what year were these abortions given? Because it is strange for a person to be in the grapples of someone for 10 years and he be passing or allegedly passing STDs to them, but then not be passing, fertilization to them. So that's something that we definitely want, that I'm interested in finding out as well. And so Ali is asking, why does she need supervision by R. Kelly and his handlers when she sees her parents if she's not being manipulated and held against her will? That is a good question. And then so Holly wants to know about the wellness check at Trump Towers. These are great questions. And so, listen, so it doesn't seem like we're going to be able to get him back. Let me check my text messages one more time. And then after that, we're going to be wrapping this up. And I think I personally I'm riveted by this case. I'm interested in watching how it unfolds. There are a lot of things that we learned today that I did not know. And so look, it looks like we've lost him. You know what? As a matter of fact, let me try calling him. And then see what goes on from there. All right, so we're coming down to the bottom of the half hour right now, and so we're going to be jumping out of here. So I'm giving him a call right now. Give me just one moment while it's ringing. Seems like we lost him, which is so sad, but you know what? That just gives us more opportunity to be able to schedule another call for in the future. Yeah, you know, his phone was having some issues. So what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up this video. What were some of the things that you learned?
You have reached the voice.
All right. So seems like we're not going to be able to get him back on at this moment, which is cool. I think that we learned a lot. What were some of the things that you learned from this conversation? Okay, so baby's saying they just joined. Great interview, says Kelly. And Tiana saying this was something gag worthy. Really? Are you talking about a gag order? All right. So it seems like we've come to the conclusion of the broadcast right about now. I thank you all for coming out. Make sure that you thumbs up, like the video, turn on your bell notification, because merely subscribing is not enough on YouTube. If you want to be made aware of when the actual videos come out, you have got to ring the bell notification. Oh, my battery's dying. Hold on. Let me get this plugged up real quick. All right, there we go. All right. So thank you all for coming out. Thank you for helping me in asking the tough questions. This was amazing. I'm going to join you in the comments in just a moment. So I want you all to let me know what were some of the things what questions were answered for you from this interview? What were some questions that you still have which were not answered? What were some questions that were answered but then brought up other questions? So what are those things? Drop those below, and then when we get an opportunity to talk with Mr. Griggs again, when we bring him back out for the follow-up, for the sequel, then we'll be able to get some of those other questions on him. Make sure that you stay abreast of what's going on inside of this case so that when we do speak again about it, that we can have the most updated information. I learned so much from this interview. I'm happy that I had a chance to have it. Next, I'm attempting to get Avenatti in a video with us, but it's been difficult pinning him down because, you know, he's here, there, and everywhere. But I would really love to be able to get right into the eye of the storm, all of this that's going on right now. And so if there's somebody who's watching right now who has a personal connection to Michael Avenatti, make sure that you tell him to call me, return my email, and let's get him on a broadcast and ask him some of these questions that we're dying to learn and understand the answers to. So thank you all so much for coming out. I love you all very, very much. Go out there and love one another, but most importantly, love yourself. Love yourself. And part of loving yourself, we're going to take this to the savages now. Part of loving yourself is doing what your spirit tells you to do, what you feel is right on the inside of you, even if other people are saying that you're wrong, even if other people, because you know there are people are like, oh, she's grown now, etc., etc., etc. But that is their child, and they have reason to believe that their child is being harmed. So do you just throw up your hands and be like, oh, well, she says she could? No, you do what you feel that you need to do on the inside. And so loving yourself is staying true to yourself and fighting for your loved ones who are not able to fight for themselves for any number of reasons, whether it's mental brainwashing, whether it's being in an abusive relationship, whether it's not knowing their own worth, you know. And I say within reason, especially if you have other children, you know, you have to find a way to find balance for your own life and still be able to advocate and provide a voice for the voiceless. So on that note, I will see you all in the next video. I am thinking about doing an advice hour after we get off of here, but I need to calm down I'm so excited. My adrenaline is pumping right now. So I'm thinking about doing a live advice hour where we have you call in and we talk about your relationship issues that are going on. And on that note, listen, I will see you all in the next video. The only way that you'll know about the next video is to make sure that your bell notification is on. So listen, on that note, Tonya Tko, and I am out. Peace.